After my emergency surgery, not one family member came to visit me, but they kept sending party photos in the group chat. From my hospital bed, I watched every story they posted. 3 days later, I saw 47 missed calls and finally a text from Mom. Answer me. This is serious. When I picked up, I said something that left them completely silent. There are moments in life that hit you like a punch to the gut, moments so raw they shatter everything you thought you knew about family. I was 29 when my own blood turned their backs on me, leaving me feeling more abandoned than a forgotten toy, all while I was lying in a hospital bed, sliced open and alone. My name is Noah, and for as long as I can remember, I was the family's anchor. The guy who'd show up hours early to set up Christmas dinner, the one who never forgot a birthday, the one who'd quietly bail my younger sister out when she inevitably blew through her rent money. I assumed all that effort, all that unconditional support, actually meant something. It turns out, I was painfully, tragically wrong. It all started with a sharp, stabbing pain one morning. The kind that makes you curl up in a ball, gasping for air. By that afternoon, I was in the ER, being told my appendix was about to burst and I needed emergency surgery, immediately. In that moment, all I could think was, someone's going to come. Someone's going to drop everything and be here. From my hospital bed, I texted the family group chat, "Hey, I'm in the ER, going into surgery in an hour." My mom replied with a thumbs up emoji. A thumbs up. My dad? Nothing. My sister, Claire, sent, "OMG, good luck." 2 minutes later, she followed up with a selfie from a trendy brunch spot, mimosa in hand. I just stared at my phone, desperately trying to convince myself they'd show up later. The surgery itself was fine, but when I woke up, groggy and sore, the nurse said I might have visitors. Nobody came. Okay, I thought, maybe tomorrow. But the next day, my phone buzzed constantly, not with texts asking how I was, but with the family group chat blowing up. Photos and videos of a barbecue at my parents' house. There they were, passing burgers, laughing, my sister cradling her new puppy, my parents beaming like it was the happiest day of their lives. Not one, "We miss you." Not one FaceTime call. I was lying there, hooked up 2 and 4, scrolling through those pictures like some ghost, peeking in from the outside. I tried to shake it off, tried to tell myself I was overreacting. But then it happened again. My cousin posted a video, everyone dancing, music blasting. My mom commented, "Best weekend ever." While I was lying there alone, trying to reach a cup of water without ripping my stitches. A hollow, cold anger started to build in my chest. The nurse asked if I was okay, and I lied. I said I was fine. By day 3, the hope was gone. I just watched their updates, a strange, self-inflicted punishment. Laughing emojis, cocktail photos, inside jokes I wasn't part of. I couldn't even mute the chat. Some pathetic part of me was still waiting for someone to say, "Hey, let's go see Noah." That message never came. Instead, I got tagged in a photo of my sister's new outfit with the caption, "Noah would love this." Like I was just a punchline. Then, 3 days after my surgery, everything shifted. I woke from a nap to 47 missed calls. Mom, Dad, my sister, even my cousin. My stomach twisted. I thought something terrible had happened. Then Mom's text, "Pick up. It's important." No, "How are you feeling?" No explanation. Just a demand. I stared at it, then finally hit call. When she answered, she sounded frantic, but not with worry. More like someone had lost something valuable. She launched straight into talking before I could even say hello. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I'd been silent for days, swallowing the hurt, trying to convince myself I didn't need them. But hearing her voice, hearing her treat me like I was just a resource, a utility to be tapped when convenient, a strange, calm clarity settled over me. I said something that made her go dead silent. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty about it. That's where things really started to unravel. I hung up and just sat there, staring at the white hospital wall, blood rushing in my ears. This wasn't my usual hot, burning anger. This was cold, slow, like ice water filling my chest. Mom hadn't asked if I was okay. She hadn't even mentioned I was still in the hospital. She had called me about money. Not for me, but for my sister. Claire's dream trip to Greece was apparently falling apart due to unexpected expenses, which, knowing her, meant a new phone and another designer purse. And Mom thought I should step in and help. Lying there, sore and stitched up, I finally saw it. This wasn't a one-off. This was my family's pattern, turned up so loud I couldn't ignore it. I'd always been the one they relied on when things got messy. When Dad's business had a rough year, I loaned him $8,000 from my savings. When Claire's car broke down, I paid half for a new one. Every single time, it was presented as if I was the only one capable of stepping in. And every single time, they thanked me briefly, then went right back to treating me like an afterthought. The day after that call, my doctor cleared me to go home, but I was still moving slow, every step a careful shuffle. Claire didn't offer to pick me up. When I asked my parents, Dad just said, "We're busy today. Can you take an Uber?" So I did. I carried my own discharge papers, my pain meds, my half-filled duffel bag out to the curb and called a car. The driver, a stranger, was kinder than my own family. He asked if I needed help, if I wanted him to drive slower. I remember staring out the window, wondering when I'd stopped expecting my family to care. When I got home, my fridge was empty. I hadn't had time to grocery shop before surgery, and no one had stocked anything for me. A single bottle of mustard, an almost empty carton of expired eggs. My phone buzzed. It was a photo in the family chat, my parents, Claire, cousins, all at a restaurant, plates of pasta everywhere. Claire's caption, "Carb loading for Greece," with a bunch of laughing emojis. I just sat on my couch and stared at that picture. The next few days blurred. Claire started calling, not to check in, but to beg for money. First for flights, then the hotel, then for spending money so I can actually enjoy myself. When I told her I was recovering and wasn't really in a position to lend anything, she got mean. She called me selfish. "You never help with anything," she shrieked. I almost laughed out loud at that one. "You owe me, you're single, you don't have kids to spend money on." I was lying on my couch with an ice pack on my stomach while she said all this. One night, about a week after my surgery, I saw something that pushed me over the edge. Claire posted a story showing off a new designer handbag she'd treated herself to, the same one she claimed was the reason she needed my help with her hotel. My parents commented with heart emojis, cheering her on. Not one of them had asked how I was healing. Not one had stopped by with food or even texted, "How's the pain?" Then came Sunday. Sunday dinners at my parents' house, a tradition for as long as I could remember. I didn't go. Still too sore to sit comfortably. But I got to see it all anyway, thanks to the group chat. Claire sent a video of everyone laughing around the table. My dad made a joke about finally getting peace and quiet without Noah here to talk about work. My mom sent me a separate text, "You missed a good one tonight. No, hope you feel better soon." Just that. By Monday, a chilling realization dawned on me. They weren't just neglecting me. They were actively pretending I wasn't there. As if I'd served my purpose by being the helpful, responsible one, and now I was just an inconvenience. And yet, they still expected me to be available. Mom called that morning, chipper as ever. "Could you look over some paperwork for Dad? He doesn't understand that legal stuff." I told her I was resting. "You can rest after," she said. "It's just a few forms." I hung up and sat in the quiet. For the first time, I thought, what if I just didn't help? What if I stopped being the one they could rely on? That thought sat with me all day, growing bigger, louder. 2 days later, my stitches were itching, and I was finally moving around my apartment without holding my stomach. I walked to the grocery store for the first time, bought myself a real meal. While I was there, I ran into my cousin, one of the partygoers. He blinked at me surprised. "Oh man, you're out? I thought you were still in the hospital. Your mom said you were fine though." That stung. She hadn't told anyone I was still recovering. He went on to say they were planning a big farewell dinner for Claire before her trip. "It'd be nice if you showed up for once," he added. For once? My face heated up, as if I was the one avoiding them. I smiled, said I'd think about it, but inside, something hardened. That night, the group chat blew up again. Plans for the farewell dinner. Jokes about how much food they'd need because Noah eats like a horse. Claire asked if I could bring dessert, like I always do. I stared at my phone, feeling the familiar mix of hurt and obligation twist in my stomach. That was the moment. I was done playing along. Done showing up. Done bringing dessert. Done being the reliable one who kept the machine running. I didn't say anything to them. Not yet. But I started quietly pulling back, just enough for them to notice. I stopped replying in the chat. I didn't return Dad's calls about the paperwork. I let Claire's texts go unanswered. And then, just when things were getting uncomfortably quiet, Mom sent me a message that made my jaw drop. It wasn't just a text. It was a small bomb dropped right in the middle of my day. I was sitting on my couch, sipping tea, finally starting to feel human again. My stitches were healing, the pain a dull ache instead of a sharp stab. I'd almost convinced myself to let some of the anger go. Then my phone buzzed. Her message: "We're putting down the deposit for your sister's trip tonight. We went ahead and used the joint account. You can reimburse later." I read it 3 times before it sank in. The joint account. Something I'd set up years ago for family emergencies, medical bills, surprise repairs, that kind of thing. I was the one who'd been steadily putting money into it because I had a steady job and fewer expenses. Everyone else was supposed to contribute, but of course, I was the only one who did. I hadn't touched that account since I'd gone into surgery. And now I was finding out, through a casual text, that they'd used my money, not for an emergency, but for Claire's vacation. My hands started shaking as I unlocked the banking app. Sure enough, there it was, $2,300 gone, withdrawn just the day before. The balance, which I'd been slowly building up for months, was almost empty. I felt this hollow, nauseating mix of betrayal and disbelief. They hadn't even asked. They just took it, like it was a given that my money was there for them to use. I called Mom immediately. She picked up on the second ring, sounding cheerful. "Oh, good, you saw my message. Don't worry, we'll settle up after your sister gets back." She just really needed this trip. I don't even remember what I said right away. I just know my voice was calm. Too calm. "You took money out of the emergency account for a vacation." Mom sighed like I was being dramatic. "Noah, you're overreacting. She's been so stressed. This trip is good for her mental health. Besides, you don't even need that money right now. You're fine." "I just had surgery," I reminded her, my voice tightening. That account was for emergencies, like if I had unexpected medical bills, which I do. There was a pause. Then she said, almost laughing, "You have insurance. You'll be okay. Don't be so selfish." Selfish? That word landed like a slap. I could feel the back of my neck getting hot. I thought about all the times I'd bailed them out. All the weekends I'd spent fixing things around their house instead of doing something for myself. All the money I'd quietly handed over without ever asking for it back. And now, the first time I needed them, really needed them, they were eating at restaurants, throwing parties, and emptying my savings to send my sister on a vacation. When I hung up, I was shaking so hard I had to set my phone down. I sat there in silence for a long time, the betrayal just sinking deeper. And then, as if the universe was trying to twist the knife, Claire called me on FaceTime. When I answered, she was grinning, already in the back of an Uber on the way to the airport. "Thanks for covering the hotel," she said, waving a passport at the camera. "I'll pay you back, eventually. Anyway, love you. Bye." She hung up before I could even respond. I sat there staring at my own reflection, my jaw clenched so tight it hurt. The sheer audacity. No apology, no acknowledgement, just an assumption that I'd be happy to bankroll her trip. The next few days were worse. Every time I opened social media, there she was, posting pictures of herself on a beach, holding cocktails, showing off her vacation haul. She captioned one post, "Self-care queen. You gotta do what you gotta do." I almost threw my phone across the room. Meanwhile, my mailbox was filling up with hospital bills. Even with insurance, I owed thousands. I called Mom, trying not to explode, and asked if they could help cover what they took from the account. She brushed me off. "We'll talk about it later. Right now, we're focusing on your sister. She deserves this time." That was the moment something in me broke. Not cracked, broke. I'd been walking this fine line, trying to keep the peace, trying to believe that if I just stayed calm and patient, they'd come around. But they weren't going to. They were never going to see me as anything other than the one they could lean on. The one who would just quietly take care of everything without complaint. The final straw came the night of Claire's farewell dinner, the one I hadn't planned on attending. I stayed home, figuring it would be easier not to see them all laughing over pasta they'd bought with my money. But around 10 p.m., my phone buzzed with a text from Dad. "Where were you tonight? You really disappointed your mother. We counted on you to bring dessert. Don't make your sister feel bad before her trip." I just sat there staring at it, my heart pounding. Counted on me? Like I was some kind of caterer they'd hired, and I'd failed to deliver. My hands were shaking as I typed back. "You took my money without asking. You didn't visit me once while I was in the hospital. And you still expect me to bring dessert." He didn't reply. But the next morning, I woke up to a long paragraph from Mom about family obligations, not holding grudges, and remembering who's always been there for you. I laughed out loud reading it. Who's always been there for me? The irony was so sharp, it was almost funny. It was around then that I started quietly putting my own plan together. Not for dessert, not for another round of forgiveness, but for something very different. I didn't tell them. I didn't even hint at it. I just started preparing, step by step, letting the anger settle into something sharper, something I could actually use. And then, just when I thought it couldn't get worse, Mom sent me a message that made my chest go cold. It wasn't about money this time. It wasn't about dessert. It was something much bigger, and it was going to change everything between us. Mom's message came late at night, just as I was getting ready for bed. It was short, just a few sentences, but it hit harder than anything she'd said so far. "We need you to transfer the rest of the emergency account balance before the 1st of the month. Your dad's covering some expenses for your sister while she's gone. We'll settle up when things calm down. Be a team player. Be a team player." That phrase echoed in my head. It wasn't even a request. It was a directive. Like I was an employee being told to work overtime without pay. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, feeling that cold anger spread through me again. I wasn't even surprised anymore. And somehow, that hurt more than the message itself. I had reached a point where I expected this from them, expected to be taken for granted. The next morning, I got a call from the hospital billing department. They wanted payment on the remainder of my balance. When I explained I needed another month, the woman on the phone was kind, but firm. Interest would start accruing. I hung up feeling hollow, knowing that the money they'd taken would have more than covered that bill. That afternoon, I opened the group chat to find a stream of pictures from Claire's trip. She was smiling on a boat, drinking champagne, holding up a luxury shopping bag with the caption, "Treat yourself. Life's too short." My parents commented with clapping emojis and "so proud of you." Like spending my money was an accomplishment worth celebrating. I didn't reply to the chat. I didn't reply to Mom's follow-up message asking if I'd sent the transfer yet. I just went quiet. The following days were some of the loneliest I can remember. My apartment was dark and quiet. I barely left except for groceries. My body was still healing, and so was my mind. The betrayal had gone from a sharp pain to a dull ache, like a bruise that wouldn't fade. I found myself sitting in silence for hours, staring at nothing, replaying every conversation. And yet, somewhere in all that quiet, something started to shift. At first, it was just a thought. What if I just walked away? Not just from this situation, but from all of it. The constant obligations, the unspoken expectation that I'd always be available to fix everything. The thought grew louder over the next week. On the 5th day of my silence, Mom showed up at my apartment, unannounced. I heard the knock, and for a second, I almost didn't answer. When I finally opened the door, she walked right past me without waiting for an invitation. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't mention the surgery. She just went straight to the point. "You've been ignoring us, and it's making your sister anxious before she flies home. You need to apologize, and you need to send that transfer." I just stared at her, stunned at the audacity. She was standing in my living room, scolding me like a child in timeout. "I'm not apologizing," I said finally, my voice flat. Her eyes narrowed. "Noah, don't make this harder than it needs to be. You're part of this family. You don't get to withhold support just because you're in a bad mood." Bad mood. That was the phrase that made me realize she wasn't going to hear me, no matter how I said it. This wasn't a conversation. It was a demand disguised as concern. When she left, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frame, I sank down onto the couch and stayed there for a long time, just staring at the spot where she'd been standing. That was the moment I hit rock bottom. Not because of what she said. I'd heard worse, but because I finally understood that nothing I did would ever be enough for them. There would always be another emergency, another reason they needed me to step up, another way for them to dismiss my feelings as an inconvenience. I let myself sit with that grief for a few days. I didn't rush to fix it. Didn't try to be the bigger person like I always had. I let myself feel angry and small and hurt. I let the loneliness wash over me until I was tired of feeling powerless. Then, slowly, I started to get up. I logged into the emergency account and moved the remaining balance into a new account with only my name on it. I called the bank and had the joint account closed entirely. I changed the password on a few other shared logins, streaming services, family plans, anything that had my name or card tied to it. I didn't announce it. I didn't warn them. I just did it quietly, step by step, as if I were slowly reclaiming pieces of my life they'd been using without asking. At the same time, I started saying no to everything. Dad called to ask if I could help with some tax forms. I told him I was too busy. Mom texted me asking if I could pick up a package delivered to my address by mistake. I said I wasn't home. Each time I said no, I felt a little lighter. But it wasn't just about cutting them off. In the quiet, I began thinking about what I wanted my life to look like without this constant drain. What would I do with my time, my money, my energy if I didn't have to spend it putting out their fires? That was when the plan really started to take shape. It wasn't going to be loud or dramatic or impulsive. It was going to be quiet, deliberate, something they wouldn't see coming until it was already too late. And just when I thought I had time to plan it out carefully, Claire came back from her trip and brought the storm right to my door. When Claire came back from Greece, I expected at least a little humility. Maybe she'd thank me, or at least pretend to appreciate the fact that my money had covered her vacation. Instead, the first message she sent to the group chat was a photo of her standing in front of the Parthenon with the caption, "Thanks to my amazing family for making this possible." No mention of me by name, no direct thanks, just a vague nod to the family. As if we'd all chipped in equally, instead of me funding the whole thing. I didn't reply, not to that, not to the next round of pictures she posted of her shopping bags, or the caption bragging about how refreshing the trip was. I just kept focusing on my own life. And here's the thing, once I stopped pouring all my time, money, and energy into keeping everyone else afloat, I realized how much I'd been neglecting myself. For years, my life had revolved around work, bailing out family, and occasionally squeezing in a night of Netflix before collapsing into bed. I didn't have hobbies. I didn't travel. I didn't even decorate my apartment beyond the bare minimum because I was never home long enough to care. But now, with all this time on my hands, I started to notice things, like how dark and bare my living room felt. I went out and bought myself a new couch, not the cheapest one, but the one I'd wanted for years. I hung pictures on the wall. I started cooking real meals again, not just grabbing takeout between errands. Physically, I was getting stronger, too. The soreness from the surgery faded, replaced by this surprising burst of energy. I started going for short walks in the evenings, just around the block at first, then farther. Something about the rhythm of walking cleared my head, made me feel more in control. Meanwhile, I started making moves at work. I'd been turning down extra projects for months because my free time was always being eaten up by family obligations. Now, I said yes. I stayed late when I wanted to, volunteered for a complicated project no one else wanted, and I crushed it. My boss noticed. He called me into his office one Friday afternoon and told me he was impressed, that he could see me stepping into a leadership role soon. That moment lit something up inside me. I walked home with my shoulders back, grinning like an idiot. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt like I was moving forward instead of just standing still. And while I was growing stronger, my family was, well, they were starting to notice my silence. It began with small things. Texts from mom saying, "We miss you at Sunday dinner." Or dad calling and leaving a voicemail about how I was pulling away from the family. I didn't answer. Then the request started. Could I help fix something around their house? Could I come look at Dad's taxes? Could I spot Claire some cash because she'd gone over budget on her trip? Each time I said no. Politely at first, then with more firmness. Claire, of course, took it personally. She sent me a long text accusing me of punishing her for taking the trip, as if the trip itself wasn't funded by me in the first place. She ended it with, "Family is supposed to support each other, Noah. Stop acting like you're better than us." That text didn't hurt the way it might have before. If anything, it clarified things for me. She wasn't sorry. None of them were sorry. They weren't trying to fix what they'd done. They were just upset that I'd stopped playing my role. So, I kept going. I started therapy, something I'd been putting off for years. My therapist helped me see just how deep this pattern of enabling went, how much I'd been taught to prioritize their needs over my own since I was a kid. For the first time, I started untangling myself from that guilt. And then something unexpected happened. My boss called me back into his office a month later and offered me a promotion, a big one. More pay, more responsibility, and a chance to move into a new apartment closer to the office if I wanted it. I said yes without hesitation. The first thing I did after signing the paperwork was find a new place. It was bigger, brighter, and felt completely mine in a way my old apartment never had. I packed my things slowly, deliberately, choosing what was worth bringing with me and leaving the rest behind. It felt like shedding old skin. I didn't tell my family I was moving. When Mom texted me one Sunday asking why I hadn't been over in weeks, I just replied, "I've been busy." Which was true. I was busy building something that was mine. On the day I moved in, I stood in the middle of my new living room, surrounded by boxes, and felt this rush of pride. I had done this. I had gotten here on my own. But with that pride came something else, something sharper. Because as much as I loved my new life, I couldn't forget what had pushed me here. Every time I saw a hospital bill, every time I thought about lying in that hospital bed watching my family's party videos, that cold anger came back. I had given them chance after chance to make it right, to show even a little remorse. And they hadn't. And now I wasn't just hurt Noah, the one they could push around. I was Noah with a better job, a new apartment, a plan forming quietly in the background. So I started preparing. I pulled together every receipt, every bank statement from the last year, every transfer I'd made to family emergencies that weren't emergencies at all. I made copies of everything and organized them into neat folders. And then I waited. Because I knew it was only a matter of time before they asked for something again. And when they did, I wasn't just going to say no. I was going to show them exactly why I was done. And sure enough, the opportunity came sooner than I expected. It didn't take long for them to come knocking again. It never does. About 2 weeks after I moved into my new place, I got a message from Dad. Not even a call this time, just a text. "Need your help with the property taxes on the lake cabin. Call when you can." The lake cabin. Of course. That place had been in the family for decades, but it was my parents' pride and joy. A spot for summer barbecues, family photos, fishing trips. Except I was the one who'd been quietly covering half the maintenance costs for the past 3 years after they claimed money was tight. I'd paid for the roof repairs, for the new water heater, even for some of the furniture. And now they wanted me to cover the taxes, too. Instead of calling back, I sat down at my kitchen table and opened my laptop. I had already gathered a folder full of documents. Every transfer, every Venmo receipt, every text from Mom or Dad asking for just a little help. But I hadn't gone deeper until now. That night, I went through everything. Years of transactions. I made a spreadsheet listing every dollar I'd ever given them, color-coded by purpose. House repairs, emergencies, my sister's car, my dad's business. By the time I was done, the total made my stomach turn. It wasn't just a few thousand here and there. It was more than $40,000. $40,000 of my hard-earned savings, spread over years of me trying to keep everyone happy. And as I stared at that number, I felt something shift again. But this time, it wasn't sadness. It was clarity. I wasn't just going to walk away. I was going to make sure they understood, without a shadow of a doubt, what they'd taken from me. And I was going to do it in a way that left no room for twisting the narrative. Over the next few days, I started quietly positioning myself. I contacted the bank and had the last of my name removed from anything shared. I double-checked the paperwork for the emergency account closure to make sure there was no way they could reopen it without me. Then I called a lawyer. I'd been putting that off for months, telling myself it was too extreme, that I didn't need to escalate things. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I needed someone in my corner, someone who could make sure I was protected if they tried to guilt or pressure me into paying for anything else. The lawyer was calm, professional, and didn't seem surprised at all by my situation. "You'd be amazed how often this happens," she said. "Families can be the worst when it comes to money, but you've kept excellent records. That's going to help you." She walked me through my options, most of which boiled down to setting hard boundaries, in writing if necessary. By the time I left her office, I had a plan and a strange sense of relief. It wasn't just me anymore. I had someone backing me up. Meanwhile, I kept living my life, going to work, making progress on the new projects my boss had given me, and enjoying my space. I hosted a small housewarming with a few close friends, people who had actually checked in on me when I was in the hospital. We ate pizza on my new couch, laughed until midnight, and for the first time in a long time, I felt surrounded by people who actually wanted to be there. And, just like clockwork, the family chat lit up again. This time, it was Claire, freshly back from her trip, complaining about how broke she was because she'd gone over budget. "Noah, can you help me just until payday?" she asked. I didn't reply. The next day, Mom called. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to the message later. "Honey, I don't know what's going on with you, but this cold shoulder thing is hurting everyone. Your sister needs you right now. We all do. This isn't like you." She was right about one thing. It wasn't like me. The old me would have caved, would have sent them money just to keep the peace. But the new me, the one who'd built a new life, gotten a promotion, and started seeing things clearly, that version of me wasn't going to cave. So instead of sending money, I sent a different kind of message. I typed up an email, not a text. I addressed it to Mom, Dad, and my sister. In it, I included the spreadsheet of every payment I'd ever made, along with copies of the receipts and screenshots of the requests. I wrote, "I'm done being the family safety net. This is everything I've contributed over the past 3 years. This is what I've spent while being told I never help with anything. This stops now. I won't be paying the cabin taxes. I won't be covering trips, cars, or repairs. If you need financial help, you'll have to figure it out without me." I didn't press send. Not yet. Because a part of me wanted to wait until the perfect moment. A moment where it would hit the hardest, where they wouldn't be able to dismiss it or spin it as me being dramatic. And that moment came faster than I thought. A week later, Mom called me again, this time sounding less chipper, more urgent. "We need to talk," she said, "about the cabin and about the family. This distance isn't healthy. Come to dinner this Sunday, please." I almost said no. But then I thought about the email draft sitting in my inbox, the spreadsheet ready to go, the months of hurt and frustration that had been building up. No, I wouldn't skip this dinner. I was going to go, and I was going to be ready. Because if they wanted to talk about the cabin, if they wanted to talk about the family, then for the first time in my life, I was going to make them listen. Really listen to me. And that was the night everything would start to shift for good. Sunday came faster than I expected, but I felt more ready than I ever had. I got dressed deliberately. Nothing flashy, but nothing that would make me look like I was showing up to beg either. I wore a dark button-down, nice shoes, and took my time combing my hair. I looked calm, collected. The drive to my parents' house was quiet except for the hum of the tires, and I used the whole ride to rehearse what I was going to say. Not to argue, not to yell, just to make it impossible for them to ignore me. When I pulled into their driveway, I noticed something right away. Everyone was already there. Claire's car, my cousin's cars, even my uncle's truck. This wasn't just a casual Sunday dinner. This was an intervention, and I was the target. Inside, the house smelled like roast chicken and garlic bread, but there was a heaviness in the air that had nothing to do with food. My mom met me at the door, all tight smiles, and ushered me into the dining room where everyone was already seated. "Good, you're here," she said, like I'd been late to an appointment. "Sit down." We have a lot to talk about. I sat, folded my hands in front of me, and waited. Dad started, Noah, this distance you've put between yourself and the family isn't healthy. We've been worried. Your sister feels like you're punishing her. We all feel like you're holding a grudge. Claire jumped in before I could reply. You've been so cold lately, Noah. This is supposed to be a happy time for me. I just got back from my trip and you're ruining it with your attitude. I let them talk. Let them air out every complaint, every accusation about how I was withdrawing and acting superior and making everyone feel guilty. I just sat there, calm, nodding occasionally. When they finally finished, I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Are you done? I asked quietly. Mom frowned. This isn't about paperwork, Noah. This is about, no, I said, my voice firm but level. This is about exactly this. I opened the folder and laid the first page on the table. The spreadsheet. Color-coded, neatly labeled, every dollar accounted for. This, I said, tapping the page, is what I've contributed to this family over the last 3 years. $42,763. Roof repairs, water heater, car repairs, the Greece trip, all of it. And do you know what I got in return? Not a single visit when I was in the hospital. Not one meal dropped off. Not one word of thanks, just more demands. The room went quiet. Claire shifted uncomfortably. Dad looked down at the table. I slid the next few pages out. Receipts, transfers, screenshots of texts asking me for help. You want to talk about me holding grudges? This is why. This is what you've taken from me, financially and emotionally, without a second thought. And I'm done. Mom started to say something, but I held up a hand. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to be clear. The emergency account is closed. My name is off every shared bill, every streaming service, every phone plan. From this point forward, if there's an expense, taxes, repairs, trips, anything, you will not be coming to me. I will not pay. I will not co-sign. I will not spot you until payday. I turned to Claire. And you especially do not ask me for money again, ever. You just spent thousands of my dollars on a vacation and had the nerve to call me selfish for not sending more. That ends today. She went red in the face, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't believe I was actually saying this out loud in front of everyone. You're being dramatic, she snapped finally. This is family. We're supposed to help each other. Family goes both ways, I said evenly. And you made it very clear you only see me as a wallet, not a brother. So, no, I won't be helping anymore. You'll have to figure things out. The way I had to figure out how to get home from surgery alone. The silence that followed was so thick, I could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Finally, Mom tried again. Noah, you can't just cut us off like this. What about the cabin? We can't cover those taxes without you. I looked her dead in the eye. Then sell it. The words landed like a punch. Dad's face went pale. The cabin was his pride, his legacy. I'm not paying for something I don't even use, I continued. If you can't afford it, let it go. But you will not make me responsible for it. Not anymore. I stood up, gathered my papers, and tucked them back into the folder. I came here tonight to say this once so there wouldn't be any confusion later. You know where I stand now. And then, with the entire table staring at me in stunned silence, I walked out. On the drive home, my hands were steady on the wheel. For the first time in years, I felt free. But that wasn't the end. Because what I didn't tell them, what I was saving for later, was that I'd already taken one final step to make sure they couldn't drag me back into this cycle. And when they found out what it was going to hit harder than anything I'd said at that table. Driving home that night felt different than any other drive I'd ever made from that house. For the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel like I had to brace myself for the next phone call, the next guilt trip, the next emergency. I had said what I needed to say, and I hadn't yelled, hadn't begged, hadn't let my voice shake. The silence after I walked out was still ringing in my ears when I got back to my apartment. I half expected my phone to blow up with calls and texts the moment I shut my door behind me, but it didn't. It stayed quiet all night, which somehow felt louder than any argument they could have thrown at me. The next morning, though, the storm came. At 7:12 a.m., my phone lit up with a text from Claire. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You made me look like some spoiled brat. I was counting on you to help, and you just turned your back. I hope you're happy. I didn't reply. At 8 o'clock, Mom called. This time I let it go to voicemail, then listened as she left a long, rambling message about how shocked she was at my behavior. How cruel it was to bring up money in front of the whole family. We were trying to have a nice dinner, she said. You didn't have to make it a spectacle. Again, I didn't reply. By noon, my cousin texted me privately, saying, honestly, good for you. Someone had to say it. You should have seen their faces after you left. Total panic. That made me smile for once. Someone in the family actually understood what I'd been trying to do. And then came the message I had been waiting for. The one I knew would come eventually. It was from Dad. Short. Clipped. No greeting. The county sent a notice. Cabin taxes are past due. Need you to send your share today or we'll get hit with penalties. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I opened my laptop, went into my email drafts, and hit send on the message I'd been holding back for weeks. The email went out instantly, the spreadsheet, the receipts, the statement that I was done. But I added one more attachment this time, a scan of the document proving I'd removed myself legally from anything tying me to the cabin, including maintenance and tax obligations. My lawyer had filed the paperwork 2 weeks earlier, and now it was official. I ended the email with one final line. This is no longer my responsibility. Handle it yourselves. Less than 10 minutes later, my phone rang. It was Dad. I let it go to voicemail. His message this time wasn't calm. Noah, you went too far. Do you even understand what you've done? We can't cover those taxes without your contribution. If we lose the cabin, it's on you. I sat back in my chair and let that sink in. Even now, even with everything laid out in black and white, he still wanted me to feel guilty. But I didn't. That evening, I poured myself a drink and sat on my new couch, watching the sun set through the big windows of my apartment. My phone buzzed occasionally, Mom, my sister, Dad, but I didn't pick up. I just watched the sky turn orange and pink and felt peaceful. 2 weeks passed before I heard anything new. Then my cousin texted again. They put the cabin on the market. I don't know what reaction I expected to have. Maybe sadness, maybe nostalgia, but all I felt was relief. That cabin had been a symbol of obligation for me for so long. Every summer I was expected to go fix something, clean something, spend money on something. Letting it go felt like letting go of a weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders. A month later, Claire tried one last time to reel me back in. She called me late at night, sounding tearful. Noah, you've made your point, okay? Can we just go back to normal? I need help with my rent this month and I don't know who else to ask. I thought about all the times I'd helped her before. All the times I'd said yes because it was easier than saying no. And then, calmly, I said no. There was silence on the line, just her breathing. You really mean that? She asked, her voice small. Yes, I said. I do. I'm done, Claire. For real this time. She hung up without saying goodbye. That was the last time she asked me for anything. Life got quieter after that. Quieter in a good way, without the constant drain of their demands. I had space to focus on myself. I finished decorating my apartment, started taking weekend trips with friends, even signed up for a photography class I'd always wanted to try. Every now and then, I get updates from my cousin about family dinners. He said my absence was still a topic, that Mom sometimes got teary-eyed about how I'd changed, and Dad just stayed quiet. But here's the thing, I didn't feel guilty. Not anymore. Because they were right. I had changed. I'd stopped letting them use me like a safety net. I'd stopped sacrificing my own well-being just to keep the peace. The last time I saw them was at a small family event a few months later. They were polite, almost cautious around me, like they'd finally realized I wasn't going to slide back into my old role. And when the evening ended, Mom tried to hand me a stack of receipts for something they'd bought for the family, like she was testing the waters. I looked her in the eye, smiled politely, and said, "That's not my responsibility." Then I handed the receipts back, turned, and walked out into the cool night air. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel like I was walking away from my family. I felt like I was walking toward myself. And that was the most satisfying feeling of all. If you enjoyed this story, Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more crazy Reddit tales, and ring the bell so you never miss the next one. And hey, share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to know what you would have done in this situation.